Fernando Rielo was born into a Catholic family in Madrid on August 28, 1923. In fact, his mother and sisters were all Idente missionaries. He was a normal child, although inwardly he already lived the filial consciousness that marked his whole existence because the Heavenly Father was his passion.
En el momento mismo de nacer, tuve la visión del Padre. Una visión incompleta, incoada por la visión del Padre, que me dio un beso cuando se dice fiat, hágase, es con la palabra, ¿no? Pues sentí ese beso en el espíritu, que no se me marcha nunca, porque me dejó grabada la conciencia filial de él. Yo tengo una conciencia filial marcadísimamente filial, que me ha perseguido toda mi vida desde la niñez, desde los últimos años.
At the age of 12, he received his first Holy Communion in a pre-war social situation. And a few days later, a group of anarchists who had seen him in his first communion suit put him against a wall to shoot him for his Catholic faith. But as he said later, it was not his hour. On Saturday mornings, he used to go to the Church of the Fathers of St. Paul, where he would join in the singing of the Salve Regina to the Miraculous Virgin, which aroused in him countless emotions, and he received some mystical favors from our Blessed Mother Mary. At the age of 15, he read Fabiola, the novel that recounts the deeds of the first martyrs of the first century. He wanted to be like them, and when he could not give his life for Christ as he wished, he made a small incision in his hand, and with his own blood he wrote the Sacra Martirial. It is a prayer recited by his spiritual children.
Sacra Martirial, el original,
sí,
que se perdió,
sí.
Fue escrito con sangre.
Sangre tuya.
Sangre mía, de la mano.
Te cortaste.
Me corté
Para escribirla.
Y escribí la Sacra Martirial.
Hablaba eso, te prometo, Señor, ¿no? Vivir y transmitir el Evangelio.
Con el sacrificio de mi vida, de mi fama, fiel al mayor testimonio de amor, morir por ti.
In the early morning of August 28, 1939, his 16th birthday, he heard the voice of the Father inviting him to be holy as he is holy. At that time, he was in Balsain, in a camp with a few hundred boys because he was affiliated with the youth organization. He never forgot the promise he made to the Father to struggle to be holy. And we must keep this in mind because it is a fundamental milestone in his life. On that memorable day in the Prado del Redondillo, he embraced the trunk of that pine tree through which he had heard the voice of the Father asking him to be holy. When he was 18 years old, his father suffered a serious illness, and he, being responsible for the family situation, although his academic plans were different, he prepared for the post office national exam, which he passed. He was assigned to Granada, although his final assignment would be Ujíjar in the Alpujarra of Granada. He arrived in Ujíjar armed with his faith, as always trusting in the Father's will, and carried out in a commendable apostolic work, mainly with children who needed education and to whom he gave classes. One day, in the local restaurant, he met a very beautiful young woman, he told us, with whom he fell in love and with whom he thought of starting a family. But very soon, in the chapel of San Anton, where he went every evening to pray, the Father asked him to leave her. And he did so while he danced the Blue Danube with her, in the same place where he had met her. She received the news with surprise and tears, but he told her in reply that he must follow his destiny. Also in Ujíjar, there was an act of faith in the midst of a great drought that had already lasted 3 years. Fernando suggested to the parish priest that the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus be taken out in procession. He was the only one carrying an umbrella, which attracted the attention of the people who asked him about it. He replied that if they were going to ask for rain, it was normal to carry an umbrella. And as soon as the image was brought out, so much water poured down from the sky that they had to shelter it wherever they could. For this act of faith, he would be remembered and held up as a model. And in the village, some people affectionately called him the man with the umbrella.
Eso fue que llevaban 3 años sin llover en Ujíjar y se perdían las cosechas. Entonces hicieron una procesión para que ese año lloviera al menos lo suficiente para salvarse las cosechas. Y entonces, de repente, yo salí con el paraguas y a señal de tener que ponerme el paraguas por la lluvia, y efectivamente se lanzó una tormenta que después salió publicado en la prensa del día de allí de Granada, diciendo que había ocurrido un fenómeno muy extraño de una lluvia que había caído en Ujíjar y en ningún otro sitio del lugar.
Pues hay una misionera que es de allí, que se llama Angustias, y dice que hay un señor que le dijo a ella: «Ah, tú eres misionera de Rielo, del Señor del Paraguas».
El uno que creía en el milagro.
Claro, de que iba a haber el milagro.
Claro.
De que ese milagro lo tenía, aunque fuera cubrirme yo con mi paraguas.
He left that village experiencing rather great uncertainty because he did not know what he had to do with his life. And having returned to Madrid, one day he entered the church of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. He didn't know the name of the church. and he knelt down before the tabernacle, asking Christ to make him see what his will was. When he was approached by a religious, he realized that he must become a Redemptorist, the order to which that church belonged. So, after completing his military service, he spent 10 years in this congregation, which he was forced to leave in 1954. There, he had started the Christus movement, the forerunner of the Motus Christi, which is carried out all over the world by the Idente missionaries. On December 24, 1951, while still in the Astorga residence for students of the Redemptorist Fathers, he had a vision in which the institution he was to found was announced to him, although at the time he did not realize what it all meant, and it was some time before he became aware of it. On leaving the Redemptorist congregation, he felt urged by the Father to found, and this was something that he in no way wanted to do, but at the same time, it burned within him. That is why he decided to consult with 12 religious of different orders with a reputation for proven virtue and from different parts of Spain, because he wanted to know their opinion. But the judgment of all 12 was unanimous. He had to found. The last consultation was in the sanctuary of the Cristo del Pardo in Madrid, with a Capuchin priest he trusted. When Fernando saw that it was inevitable for him to found, he prostrated himself before the famous sculpture of the Dead Christ, masterwork of Gregorio Fernandez. And here, the Father, showing him his divine brother, entrusted him to his hands. A new stage in his life was now beginning. He arrived in Santa Cruz de Tenerife on January 6, 1957. At the entrance to the capital, at the viewpoint called Vista Bella, he heard the divine voice telling him that this was the city chosen for the foundation, and that it would be a place of the cross and of glory. And that's exactly the way it was. He immediately promoted an impressive apostolic movement that spread to other islands. The first missionaries were married men and women. And with a group of them, on June 29, 1959, the foundation was formalized by handing over the founding letters to Bishop Domingo Pérez Cáceres, who welcomed the founder and his work with great hope. And he helped him in every possible way. But Don Domingo soon died, and then the problems began for the founder and the institution. Fernando and a group of missionaries would go out at night to spread the gospel in the towns and villages of the island of Tenerife. And they would return in the early hours of the morning, just long enough to have a frugal breakfast and quickly start the next day's work. Once, an extraordinary event took place, which the founder himself recounts. Let's listen to him.
Pues hubieron verdaderos milagros. Estamos a la altura de Guimar, unos 30 y pico kilómetros de Tenerife, de Santa Cruz. Y son las 6 y pico de la mañana. ¿Cómo recorrer? Yo, en fin, pues 30 kilómetros aproximadamente. Nada, que no tiene gasolina y ya está. Y entonces el apuro de todos y yo pues yo me veía con un expediente y yo digo, al mismo tiempo que pronuncio las palabras, tú pon echa el freno, eso, como se llame, eso para adelante, el coche para adelante. Y dije yo, en nombre de la Santísima Trinidad, camina. Empezó a correr el coche. ¿Sabéis vosotros lo que es un coche? Recorrer unos 30 kilómetros sin gasolina.
This act of faith, which the founder humbly recalled, and which on this occasion he had narrated to his spiritual children with a sense of humor, was also recounted by the missionaries who were with him in the car, and who logically were moved and edified by such a singular event. The foundation quickly spread throughout the peninsula. Vocations, mainly among young university students, grew, and new horizons opened up. But the founder saw that because of his professional work, he could not attend to the institution, and he made a pact with Christ by offering him his health. After a fortnight, he suffered a hemorrhage, and this was followed by a string of illnesses of such a caliber that he had to go to the operating theater on almost 30 occasions. He always united his many sufferings to Christ the Redeemer, and he never ceased to attend to his mission, even in moments of immense pain.
Esta tarde, cuando comencé a armarme, porque esto no es vestirme, armarme, pues en la soledad del claroscuro de la habitación, sentí primero un amor que llamo absoluto a Dios. Y le pedí una gracia. Que me dieras un ataque de amor de tal naturaleza que pararas en un instante y para siempre mi corazón. Y ese parón fuera fuente de gracia y fuese interpretado signo del mayor afecto a todos los miembros del instituto, del pasado, del presente, del futuro, de los que no están y de los que un día dejarán de estar. He instituido, mi Padre amado, este día para celebración de tu santidad ingénita. Tú eres, Padre mío, único santo ingénito. Tu ingenitud te revela origen del Verbo y del Espíritu Santo. Por esta causa concelebran tu nombre antes de la creación del mundo. Yo, Fernando, te elevo mi corazón para que estos, unidos con el Verbo y el Espíritu Santo, te celebren, Padre, en la tierra y en el cielo. Les he confesado tu nombre. Con mi confesión les he manifestado que tú, Padre mío, te diste a conocer cuando niño a mi existencia. Mi grito en la tierra ha sido: Padre, he aquí a tu Hijo. Yo te he conocido para mi sabor inefable. Este suceso no hubiera sido posible si Jesús y María no me hubiesen consagrado desde el primer instante a ti.
In Tenerife, the setbacks were especially painful, but at the same time there were many blessings. In those years, Fernando built the Monastery of the Holy Cross, which at first was a boys' school run by the missionaries. He became more and more known for his apostolic work and for his literary and philosophical work. From the very beginning, he sent His Holiness Pope Paul VI all of his doctrine in beautiful letters, which he addressed to him throughout his pontificate. The truth is that he had a captivating personality. He was elegant, he had a sense of humor, he was an exceptional orator, and emanated a strength that left no one indifferent. He had many friends in all walks of life, and from the testimonies they gave, everyone found something special about him when they met him, including the waiters who served him in the restaurant he used to go to in New York, and who affectionately called him Daddy. He was an endearing, simple, approachable, sensitive person, with a novelty in his gestures that spoke of his evangelical innocence. Never an imposition. Everything about him was kindness, refinement, a collegial spirit permeated with affection, as his spiritual children knew so well.
Stava una gotita de mar a su gaviota,
mientras un pececito lloraba su desventura.
La brisa callaba y al atardecer dormía. La brisa callaba y al atardecer dormía. Cuán dulce, triste es la vida de los que aman a ti. Cuán dulce, triste es la vida de los que aman
a ti. Todos los días,
hijo del amor, es así. A ti,
que me dices todos los días, hijo. El amor es así.
In America, a group called the Friends of Fernando Rielo was formed, made up of professors from various universities, including writers, poets, composers. Fernando was invited to give lectures, one of them at the Pachelbel Terrace at the United Nations, which had great repercussions, and also at the Organization of American States. But he continued giving lectures at other academic forums in various Latin American and European countries. He corresponded extensively with writers, professors, poets, members of the church. And he constantly received invitations to participate in cultural events. His intellectual prestige had been growing, and he obtained recognition and distinction, although he was certainly never interested in the glories of this world. By then, he had already established the Fernando Rielo World Prize for Mystical Poetry, the Fernando Rielo International Prize for Sacred Music, and the Stanislao Polonis Prize for Young Researchers, as well as creating the Fernando Rielo Foundation and the Idente Youth Foundation, among others. At the beginning of the 1980s, Fernando decided to acquire an emblematic building in the town of Constantina, Seville, destined to become the monastery, the Victory of St. Joseph. He had many projects for it, some of which he entrusted to the sculptor Javier Morales, now deceased. However, many of them have not yet been able to be realized. On one of his visits to the monastery, 2 cypress trees were planted, and the only one that has survived to the present day is the one that he planted, which is the largest and can be seen in front of the main building. He had conceived monastic life as great enrichment for the missionaries and for the people on whom their apostolic work would have an impact. The monastery of Constantina, like others owned by the missionaries, was to be a place of retreat, of prayer, of work, with a creative spirit. And all this took shape in this house, where, over the years, courses of the University of Seville, intensive Spanish courses for young Germans, international volunteer training courses have been organized. Also, conferences, gatherings, athenaeums, volunteer training, encounters with young Italians and Spaniards, summer camps, and also the art school called El Guragu have been held. On December 2nd, 1987, his right leg was amputated, and on October 22nd, 1988, he went to New York for medical treatment at Rusk Hospital. Providence determined that he would never return to Spain. In this city, he did great intellectual and apostolic social work, mainly with immigrants, whom he guided spiritually, encouraged, advised, and even helped financially in many cases. He continued to write and publish his poetic work and to develop his thought.
Yo tengo que ser santo. Y tengo que comprender este término en la oración contigo, en diálogo contigo, cuanto más tiempo mejor, en el dominio de mis defectos morales o psicológicos, de todo, de toda índole. Y ahora voy a por los demás. Y voy a anunciar tu nombre, oportuna, inoportunamente. Y voy además a traértelos aquí y a dirigirlo para que tú les dirijas. Acte director espiritual. Pero comienza por ti mismo. Sed santos. Todos en principio sois santos. Haced más santos. La santidad es dinámica. Id a Cristo. Convertíos en directores espirituales. Hablad mucho menos de Dios que hablar con Dios.
Throughout his life, every moment was the right time for him to confess his faith.
Fui al lugar de la misión, se puso el clima muy mal y no había nadie en el pueblo donde yo tenía que dar una misión. ¿Y sabéis lo que hice? Que me senté como si tuviese 600 o 600 millones y hablé solo de Cristo. En ese pueblo, al día siguiente, en aquel salón había 600 y pico o 700 y hubo un montón de conversiones. Hasta se confesaban públicamente. Bien. Luego siempre hay que pensar simplemente en dar testimonio de Cristo, nada más. y ya él se encarga de lo otro.
It was in New York that he completed his theology on St. Joseph. While he was also in New York, the chapel dedicated to Our Lady of the Mystical Life was blessed in the Almudena Cathedral in Madrid, an advocation to our Blessed Mother that Fernando had bequeathed to the Church, as he also did in the 1970s with the advocation of Our Lady of the Amazon in the Peruvian Amazon jungle as protectress of humanity, especially of children in danger. Fernando Rielo has left an enormous intellectual and spiritual legacy, the latter including the Trisaggio dedicated to our Blessed Mother Mary, which she herself gave him, and the Hail Joseph, Trisaggio dedicated to the Holy Patriarch.
Dios te salve, José, esposo de María, de la que nació Jesús llamado Cristo. Bendito tú, que justo creíste, y bendito el Mesías, al que como hijo guardaste. Santísimo José, Padre místico de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores para que seamos santos. Poema precioso.
The Institute had expanded to many countries when, just as the process of canonical recognition of the Institute was about to be completed, the Church demanded that Fernando sign his absolute renunciation of the institution as its founder. He signed the document placed before him without reading it. It was enough, he said, that it came from the Holy Father. And this is a heroic deed that not only moved Monsignor Tagliaferri, who was in charge of handing it to him, but also continues to move those who know about this. It is also the moment to remember to what degree he had fulfilled the promise to be holy that he had made to the Father in Balsahid.
Esto, guardad todos la pureza del corazón para que tengáis la pupila, esto es la inteligencia de las cosas divinas, clara.
Te he mimado, Padre, con violento corazón, ya lo sé, como debe hacerse con una rosa en el dichoso valle de una pasión, a la que el sol mira de frente, donde ya no hay ausencias que se toquen, ni pozo, ni jardín, ni pueblo que en el alma funcionen, donde ni siquiera nada es borroso, como son los recuerdos de muertes escritas en el mar o en la imagen. Ya todo es ahora y siempre, y sin embargo no es del todo que hayamos estado.
On January 23, 1994, at last, the foundation that Fernando had set up was recognized as a public association of the faithful. As already mentioned years earlier, he had agreed to remain on the sidelines and not to influence the feelings of his children, as had been requested by high ecclesiastical authorities, so that his name was not included in this recognition, which he had suffered and longed for so much.
No todo se siente,
No todo se siente y sin embargo se percibe. Siento contra mi rostro el frío solitario, soledad suya que si jamás se escribe está ahí, donde yo mi límite conozco, donde yo la termino como mar que enrollamos para llevarlo en un maletín inexistente. Amor es más allá que soledad y cuántas veces ni lo quieres. El amor con que ocultamos los llantos felices por un ser único que en nuestro aliento existe. Tu ser, Dios mío, que se mueve sin viento alguno. Tu ser, con el que tantas cosas sentimos, entre ellas, que la vida no se reduce al consumo de unos soñados colores que nuestra sed deshielen. Que hay mucho más que solo entienden quienes despiertan a la mirada ilustre de una primavera sin rubores, la que es óvalo del alma, oh el alma, si yo supiera del alma, sería la vidriera que falta a la catedral del mundo.
"40 days before his death, the Institute of Idente Missionaries was recognized by the Church at diocesan level. This decree also recognized Fernando Rielo as its founder. Subsequently, on July 11, 2009, the then Congregation for Institutes of Consecrated Life and Societies of Apostolic Life signed the decree of approval of the Institute Earth of Christ the Redeemer, Women and Men Idente Missionaries, as an Institute of Consecrated Life of Pontifical Right.
Saludo con afecto a los miembros del Instituto Misioneras y Misioneros Identes, venidos a Roma para dar gracias a Dios por la celebración del 50 aniversario de su fundación. Invito a todos a fortalecer vuestra fe y esperanza mediante el trato asiduo con Cristo en la oración, para llevar a todo el mundo el testimonio de vuestro amor a Dios. ¡Feliz domingo!
Saluto i missionari e le missionarie identes.
Los misioneros y misioneras identes están de aniversario. Nació hace 60 años como un movimiento de la Iglesia y ya en 2009 Benedicto XVI lo reconoció como Instituto de Vida Consagrada de Derecho Pontificio.
At the beginning of the third millennium, Fernando's physical illnesses were already multiplying, progressively weakening him. During his life, he lived in constant agony. But the Father let him know that he had been created with a kiss, and that with a kiss he would die. And so it was that he passed away on December 6, 2004, sitting in his wheelchair, ready to leave. It all happened in a second, the length of a kiss. His existence had clearly been shaped from beginning to end by his passion for the Heavenly Father, the Father to whom he had given his whole life. A testimony of love so awesome that neither his spiritual children nor anyone who knew him could ever forget it.
Dios mío, te he querido, te quiero, te querré. Esto me he dicho ante el espejo, y pálido el espejo se ha estremecido. única vez que he visto pálido a un espejo, pálido como lágrima que hubiese hallado, lo que solo puede amarse cuando hay recuerdos.
His remains rest in the crypt of the Almudena Cathedral in Madrid, in the chapel of Our Lady of the Rosary.